All right. Welcome back, everyone. We have a very exciting show today because it's finally getting warmer here, right? With Shimmer, and we just launched a Shimmer EVM testnet last week, and what we want to do today, together with Dave, we want to talk about what does it actually mean, right? What is going to be possible now? Because I think all of us were really waiting for the Shimmer EVM to get to this stage. And I think it's important that we basically answer your questions, what's going to happen next. And we also give you our perspective, because for us, this is really the most important milestone before we really reach the production release of the Shimmer EVM, and before we really have it all running on the Shimmer mainnet, and before we can also start working on upgrading the IOTA network. Just to quickly share my screen and show you guys what happened last week. So basically, our big focus for the last, I would say, 6 months since the launch of the Shimmer network was really to make sure that we go from the layer 1 network, right? What we had so far was the Shimmer network, the layer 1, where you can create tokens, you can mint NFTs, you can transfer tokens fearlessly. And it's been running fine for the last 6 months without any major bugs. But obviously, the main excitement for Shimmer has always been the layer 2, right? And that's what we obviously also call the execution layer of Shimmer, where we introduce smart contracts through the Shimmer EVM. And our focus has been to really make sure that this Shimmer EVM, which uses a framework called IOTA smart contracts or IOTA chains, and that this Shimmer EVM, as it will launch on the network, is running safe, is running in a stable environment, and so that we can actually host an entire ecosystem on it. And the phases that we had to go through was obviously going from the initial alpha release, which happened in September of last year, towards a sort of beta stage of the software. And now with the testnet launch of the Shimmer EVM, our big objective, together with all of you, is to really make sure that we do sufficient testing, that we deploy dApps, that we deploy whatever smart contracts, that we do stress tests, that we do more audits to make sure that we go from the current testnet towards a production release. Because that is the most important thing, right? That we make sure that what we're doing solves a need, right? That we're solving problems with our solutions, and that what we are delivering is safe, it's secure, and can host potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in value on it, right? Because if you're not safe, if you're not secure, you're not capable to be a DeFi network, right? Because we're really talking about a lot of value being secured and being transferred through this Shimmer network. And that is why this testnet phase right now is super crucial, because other than just launching the test net itself, right, the chain, what we're now also seeing is that all of the different dApps are deploying, right? So for example, Shimmer CEST started deploying. So all of you can actually test out those dApps, get comfortable using them, get comfortable understanding some of these DeFi primitives, and basically just experiment with us. And obviously, we have some pretty big plans that we're working on to actually incentivize this testing as well, so that all of you will be rewarded for your participation. For example, just today, Deeper, which is the lending market, and here you can see Adam, one of our chief degens, actually using the network, and it works pretty right. And I think that's what all of this is for, right? Just seeing this running in the wild, the teams deploying the smart contracts and trying it out. So I think that's really good. Something else that happened today is also that Multichain is going to support Shimmer. Now, obviously, we have Shimmer, we have the Shimmer EVM as the layer 2. And what's very important is this connectivity to the outside, right? So that it's not just about us having our own isolated bubble, but that all of you will also be able to bridge your favorite tokens from Ethereum, from Phantom, from BSC, from other networks to the Shimmer network. And what was really important about this announcement with Multichain is actually the bridge to IOTA. So what you will actually be able to do is to bridge your IOTA tokens from the IOTA network to the Shimmer network, so you can participate in whatever a DeFi application that you want to participate in. So all of this is really part of a major strategy that we have with Shimmer to get it to make sure that it is going to be one of the major DeFi ecosystems. So without further ado, let me get Dave on the show so we can talk about this. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Dom.
How's it going?
All good, all good. Hectic couple of weeks, but we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can really cherish this moment together with the team, because I know how hard you guys have worked on this, and it's
been a rough
really
couple of, especially the last weeks was quite a thing. But today we put out another release, fixing the last real major performance issues that we had. And it's super fast now, and now we can focus more on getting the quality in order and ensuring that we have a very stable testnet that we can roll out.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And I think the feedback so far from the community, from the dApps that have deployed, which is released today, is really amazing, right? It's really like sort of on the same level as Phantom in terms of the speed and the reliability. And obviously, I think people have to keep in mind that we're sort of iteratively going towards this release candidate, towards this production environment, right? So there's still going to be bugs, there's still going to be problems, but I think that is really the point of this testnet right now, so that as we do more testing, we will be able to get to a production release as soon as much sooner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's annoying, of course, if things go wrong, but on the other hand, it's just another bug that won't happen in production, and every learning we get from this network really helps us with getting a more stable release. So put it all to the test, try to break it at one point, and we will just learn more and improve more on that, and we'll be more confident in the actual release of Shimmer itself.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what we try to do with this testnet now, because for one, we the Shimmer layer 1 has already been running in production, right? As you can see with from the block explorer. Let me just pull it up. Over here, we've so far had more than 155,000 NFTs minted, right, on the network. So that's quite an achievement, even though we didn't really have smart contracts yet, and over 208,000 addresses. So the Shimmer layer 1 has been running in production so far, right? And so what is now for you, especially because you're obviously the main lead behind the Shimmer EVM, or like the smart contracts effort, like what do you think are the next steps, and what are the major objectives with this testnet release now?
So the launch of this testnet is actually, it has been kind of staggered over a couple of weeks. We started deploying the testnet already weeks ago, and invited some of the community projects that have been building to deploy their stuff and provide their initial input. So the first couple of issues that we had with the chain were already filtered out by their input. Now we opened up the testnet for the public so that it's used more, and we get more input from that. From that came a lot of specific issues, small ones, big ones. Most of the big ones have been resolved by now, and we're looking into the smaller ones now. After what are steps after that, it's essentially letting people use the chain, letting people run the chain. Meanwhile, we improve the software further. We will improve the documentation and the developer experience further. And we will learn from the experience. We are running this testnet as if it's a live network. So that means that we have our own internal testnet as well, where we test stuff ourselves next to all the automated testers, etc., so that we don't recklessly upgrade all the nodes and something breaks on the testnet. We really want to put up the right procedure so that we know how to do it right from the start when we start deploying it on Shimmer itself. We really need to build some battle hardening into this software. So we really need to monitor what's going on, try to put it to the test, so that we know that if we deploy this on Shimmer, that we're confident about it and that it can run without too much major issues, and that we're happy with the results. Because now it's just for fun and games, but once it's on the actual network, then there's actual value being put on the network, and we have to take that seriously, obviously.
Yeah, I found some funny comments in the community where they basically joked about that we have a testnet for the testnet.
Yeah,
and
that's only good, right? You really have to test these procedures for the deployments, right? When we started out with the testnet with a limited set of testers from the community project that we're deploying, we didn't quite do this yet. And what you notice is sometimes you deploy something and it's not well tested manually, and then a bug pops up, and then like the network is down for a couple of hours because you need to fix that bug and you can't revert anymore. That's ideally not something you want on a production network, and we are really treating this testnet as well as a production network. So our goal is to not reset it, to not have long chain halts, and to do the upgrades in a rolling fashion so that you don't have any issues with downtime when we roll out a new version.
Yeah, totally. Because I think people sometimes forget, like all of us want this stuff to be shipped yesterday, right? In a perfect world, but ultimately we live in a real world environment, and of course it would be great if we ship stuff as soon as possible. But the most important aspect of our work is really the trust in our solutions, right? People need to trust that if I commit to building on top of the ShimmerEVM, if I commit to putting my assets onto the ShimmerEVM, that they're not going to be lost, that they're not going to be gone tomorrow, right? And so that's why we have this rigorous testing infrastructure. That's why we have this testnet live right now, and that's why we're also really trying to make sure that we're testing the layer 1, right, which we've already sort of done, testing the layer 2 now with the ShimmerEVM, and also helping to test the entire ecosystem so that people get this confidence, right? Because we are sort of bootstrapping an entire new network and bootstrapping an entire new ecosystem. So it's very important that the whole stack.
And it's also like it's called Shimmer EVM. It's kind of gives the impression that it's like a direct port of EVM on top of Shimmer. That's not really the case. There's like a whole framework behind it. You can bridge your layer 1 assets seamlessly to a chain and use them on EVM chains. You have the native randomness. You have all the sandbox interaction, etc. And this logic is all new and not battle hardened yet. So that's really something that has to be carefully tested, and especially those native assets, depositing those and working with those and getting them back from the chain. Those are all things that need to prove themselves, and people need to be happy with that, because that's where the real difference is, and that's also where the things can go wrong.
Totally.
I'm really eager to looking forward to any feedback that people have on this and how we can further improve this.
Yeah. Let us maybe talk about that, because I think it's also important for people to understand that we're not just, I don't know, forking the EVM and that's it, right? Because as you said, there's a whole framework behind it, and what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to leverage the layer 1, right, which is the DAG, which is the Tangle, and then adding this execution layer on the layer 2. Right, so maybe we can talk a little bit about what are the differences between the Shimmer EVM and sort of like the Ethereum EVM.
So essentially what we have is we have a whole framework. We can call it IOTA smart contracts, or like you say, IOTA chains. And this is a smart contract network. It has consensus module, it has accounts, and it has a pluggable VM layer. So what this means is it's not just tied to EVM itself, but you can also plug in the future any other kind of virtual machine and run smart contracts in another language. Anything that might become popular might be supported. And EVM is just a part of that. So essentially what we have is we have EVM, we have the Ethereum part. That's just a small part actually of the IOTA smart contracts framework. And we actually connect that to our sandbox so that you have the stuff on there like layer 1 native assets, the layer 1 NFTs, native randomness, interoperability with other chains, converting stuff to layer 1 and back. There's really a lot of additional functionality on top of the EVM, and the EVM itself is actually just what is being used by Ethereum itself. It's compatible. You can use the same smart contracts on there. You can do the same stuff there. It just has more functionality, and it's also being kept up to date with the latest Go Ethereum version, so that any kind of security issues with Ethereum are patched directly after a new release is out. So that's completely compatible. The VM part is plugged in, but all the rest around it, that's just like custom built.
Right. So basically, this is like a multi-chain framework, right? Where anybody can then deploy their own in the future, right? Anybody can deploy their own smart contract chain or sovereign blockchain on top of
yeah. So Shimmer EVM itself is really just a single chain right now, and that's where we test the whole application framework with, and there we can deploy our first DeFi ecosystem. But this whole framework has been made to allow as many chains as you would like on attached to the Tangle, and being interoperable with each other, being able to communicate with each other, and this will really help with scaling up the whole DeFi ecosystem, but also smart contracts in general. If you can run a separate application-specific chain, or you can run your own private chain on top of the Tangle and can communicate with the DeFi chain, that open up a lot of interesting opportunities that would not be possible on Ethereum itself, because it would be either too congested or too expensive to pay for the fees for that.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think many people don't really realize this yet, but we're really sort of transforming, right, IOTA, and transforming IOTA through Shimmer as well, where we really have this new architecture with the tokenization on the layer 1, smart contracts on the layer 2, so that we really offer a very competitive network that can compete with the other DeFi protocols, right? And so I think what was very important is that we keep some of the same properties, right? Very fast transactions, obviously very low fees on the smart contract chain, on the EVM chain, but with new features to really enable composability between these networks to go multi-chain, right? Because maybe a game is going to be very popular on Shimmer. Like if we do our job really well with Shimmer, the EVM is going to be congested, right? There's no way around it. And I guess we will have higher scalability limits than on Ethereum, because we have added some improvements, but at one point we're going to hit the limit, right? And so what we already right now have is we have sort of this path to scale our ecosystem by going multi-chain, right? And so once we have deployed the Shimmer EVM, and once we are really focused on growing that ecosystem there, we will already be onto the next thing, which is really to make sure that Shimmer is able to go multi-chain. Right, and so I think that will be a very exciting path forward to really make sure that everything here is growing, and that we can become one of the biggest ecosystems out there. Are there any other benefits that we should talk about the EVM specifically? Right, you said that it is very easy to bridge layer 1 assets, right? That includes tokens, that includes non-fungible tokens, onto the EVM chain, right? Because they can get translated basically, or like get converted into their respective standards, right? Either ERC20 or ERC721, which is absolutely amazing, by the way, being able to go from layer 1 to layer 2 without any bridge, without any fees. So that's beautiful. Maybe a funny example, right? Like me and Dave tried to do sim racing the other day, and it took us like an hour to get started because I don't know, the stupid headphones weren't connecting. It took me like a long time just to log into Discord on the computer and stuff like that. And so I think it's always funny that all of us always complain about the user experience of crypto, but I think the user experience of some in real life stuff is also horrible. And I think in crypto, especially with some of these newer chains that are simply just copying Ethereum, right? They're not really taking care of improving the user experience. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you think that we have improved the user experience for developers, but obviously specifically for users.
Yeah. So this is really still a work in progress in terms of we still want to do a lot of improvements there, especially for the developer experience. But what we essentially have is, next to the basic Ethereum functionality, is a couple of magic smart contracts. That's what we call them. These are smart contracts that are available on every chain, including Shimmer EVM, and which allow you to do things actually outside of the EVM. So this is one, for example, trying to work with the native randomness. So you can call a native random function, and it will give you a unpredictable randomness, which is only defined after the consensus has been reached by the validators. So that's not something that can easily be gamed. And this is a good alternative, for example, for what you would use on another chain with a expensive randomness oracle. Another thing where the magic contracts help is, like you say, the layer 1 assets. If you go to Firefly with the latest beta version, you enter the chain address in the two field or in the field of the network, and you enter the address of your Ethereum account, you can just send over any kind of asset, native asset, your Shimmer tokens or NFT to the chain itself, and then it's automatically available there as a ERC compatible asset on the EVM chain. So without having to think about building a bridge or converting your native asset to an ERC20 or a 721, you just get them when you deposit them there. And that's a really powerful feature, because that will allow you to do anything on any chain, send things back to layer 1, keep them there safe. And then if you want to use them on a DeFi chain to trade them, for example, you can just deposit them there and use your tokens there as if they are just ERC721s or ERC20s there, but with the difference that they can be withdrawn again to layer 1. Those are some of the examples of the additional functionality that we added there, and that really take advantage of the multi-chain, multi-layer communication.
No, it's really amazing. And I think one of the, obviously, because we are EVM compatible, all the developer tooling from Ethereum, all of the existing infrastructure is also supported for the EVM. So I think it's very clear where we stand right now. And obviously the most important next steps at the moment are that the ecosystem dApps are going to deploy, right? As we saw with Deeper, as we saw with ShimmerC, TangleC is probably also going to deploy very soon. And all of the other dApps that we have in our ecosystem, right? Like if you go to the ecosystem page, there's more than 80 projects here that have signed up for our ecosystem page, right? And so I think many of them are going to deploy over the next weeks to fully support Shimmer, and also really to invite all of you to play around, right? Because that is the point of Shimmer, of the Shimmer testnet right now, so that we can actually experiment, so that we can get comfortable with DeFi, because DeFi is new to our community, to most of our community. And then also, get comfortable with the dApps, with the teams, how they operate, and also obviously get some kind of rewards out of this, because I know that many of these dApps are also airdropping tokens or airdropping NFTs. So I think this should be a fun experience for all of us. Are there any other points from your side, Dave, that I should mention, or should we go over to the questions?
Let's go over to the questions, I guess. I think a lot will pop up there.
Yeah, cool. All right. When Moon? We'll
Maybe
see
we
that.
can start with like the last one from the YouTube chat. Can I bring my ERC1155 NFTs to IOTA and be free of gas fees? So that's kind of a interesting question. I'm not quite sure what you mean with your ERC1155s. Is that like on the Ethereum network or whatever? But essentially layer 1 IOTA or layer 1 Shimmer is feeless, and you can use those tokens on a smart contract chain if you want by depositing to that chain. The interactions on the chain themselves, however, they do cost gas. You cannot really do a smart contract chain without charging gas. There's really no good way around that without making chain super vulnerable for very easy looping attacks. You're allowed with a smart contract to execute code, and if that code is free to execute, then it's really easy to just create an infinite loop and break the chain. So that's not really a good good thing to have on a public chain. Very easy to get away with that. So we do have some fees on the layer 2 chains. However, any native asset you create or have on your layer 1 Shimmer network, those are just feeless to have and hold and transfer.
Yeah, like maybe just to really clarify this point even further, right? Like the layer 1 is feeless on IOTA, right? This is our DAG. This is the tangle, so to say. So the tokens that you have on the layer 1 that you mint there or that you transfer from layer 2 to layer 1 are feeless. So they're really in your possession, right, in your wallet. On the layer 2, as we have here, these smart contract chains, as Dave already mentioned, they will have fees because they need to pay for the operation to incentivize the validators. And as Dave mentioned, otherwise there's a lot of attacks that can happen with congestion and so on and so forth. So the layer 2 will have fees, but they will be small, obviously. How does Shimmer EVM compete with Polygon's ZK layer 2? Should I take it?
Yeah, you can take it if you want.
Yeah, so I think it's a very different focus, right? Because Shimmer and the Shimmer EVM, we're focused on an EVM compatible smart contract network built on our DAG ledger, right? So we're basically focused on scaling the multi-chain environment through our DAG, because we can basically execute transactions in parallel, right, on the layer one. So with that, our hypothesis is that we can really offer a better multi-chain environment, because all these multi-chain layer 2 networks are able to interoperate and compose with each other. Polygon, who's really one of the pioneers of ZK, zero knowledge VMs, they're really focused on having a zero knowledge VM running on Ethereum by leveraging the security of the Ethereum network, right? So it's a very different target market. And our big focus with what we're doing right now on the IOTA 2.0 front is actually to support these zero knowledge rollups in the future. So the way that you can see this is that the IOTA chains framework is going to support layer 2 networks that are basically running with sort of like fraud proofs, right? Which we sort of can integrate then, where you have validators for the chain, right? Where they have an incentive through tokens or some other mechanism. And we also want to support these ZK rollups, which rely on validity proofs, right? Basically on the cryptography and relying on layer 1 smart contracts. So in the future, we're going to support both, right? We will have the IOTA chains framework, so that anybody can deploy their own EVM smart contract, can deploy their WASM smart contract. And we also want to support things like the ZK VM or others, right? So I wouldn't say that they're competitors. I would say that our focus as a layer 1 is to support both.
It's like we're offering a really, I mean, Shimmer EVM is just one iteration of a chain with EVM as a focus, but we're really focusing on offering a very flexible environment, which is also future ready. So this also means that any kind of new technology that might be worthwhile to implement, there's a lot of things going on right now, and we don't know if everything will actually be adopted or not, can actually be part of our ecosystem, and that makes it very future-proof and interesting system to have, because you know that if you have something now on Shimmer EVM, you can use that later on as well. If some new technology pops up, you just transfer your tokens to that other chain and use the new technology. And that's not something that someone else is really offering, I think.
I think people don't really realize this yet, but every technology in this space is going to become a commodity, right? Every network will be able to copy the unique features of every other network, right? And that also includes ZK VM. So I think our focus is to be the better settlement layer with some unique distinctions, so that ZK VMs are also going to deploy on Shimmer and on IOTA. So it will be like a sort of product, a sort of feature that we offer to our ecosystem to deploy. And in the future, our objective is to offer all of you, right, the developers, the builders, the users, as many options as possible, so that you can be successful on the Shimmer layer 1 and on the IOTA layer 1 by being part of the ecosystem. Next question. We'll need stablecoins on Shimmer EVM and lots of them for DeFi to thrive. What's the plan here? How will it be done? How secure will it be? There's two plans right now. First of all, there's going to be native stablecoins, right, that are basically over-collateralized, that may take IOTA tokens, Shimmer tokens as collateral and give you out a stablecoin. So there's already some development happening on that, right? So those stablecoins will probably be the first ones to launch. A second way that this is going to happen is that stablecoins will actually bridge over from other networks to Shimmer. This is why the partnership with Multichain was very important, and obviously there will also be other bridging providers in the future, so that you can bridge your stablecoins easily over to the Shimmer EVM. And actually, the third point that I forgot, we're also speaking with some of the other projects, existing stablecoin providers, to actually natively mint their stablecoins on the Shimmer network. So I would say, in terms of timelines, but I would say the first two are probably going to be available immediately with the Shimmer EVM launch on the mainnet, and then the third one is what we're working on right now, so that they're going to support us. But I fully agree with you that stablecoins are a very important key ingredient for the success of our ecosystem. How will other coins be bridged to Shimmer? Bridging IOTA tokens to Shimmer would be my first priority, but also ETH and BTC is needed. I think we answered that with the multi-chain announcement today. So to answer it, there will be bridging providers to do that. Can you once again clearly define the difference between ShimmerEVM and assembly? This confusing topic cannot be clarified enough. So the way that you can think about it is that ShimmerEVM is the first iteration of assembly. So assembly is potentially going to obviously deploy on top of IOTA, and assembly's vision is to be fully permissionless, right? Where it's not going to be a permissioned or a proof of authority-based chain, but where it will basically offer a marketplace for validators to pick and choose which chains they're going to secure, right? So it's like a permissionless multi-chain environment, because that is obviously something that we will need running on top of IOTA and on top of Shimmer. So right now with the Shimmer EVM, our primary objective is to validate the execution framework, right? What we also call IOTA chains, so that these blockchains like the Shimmer EVM can launch on top of our layer 1, can be secured through the validators. And then in the next phase, we will obviously work on sort of making it more permissionless, where anybody can become a validator to secure the layer 2 networks, which would then happen through assembly. What is going to happen with the EDF? What changes now that it is moved to the Swiss Foundation? Are there any plans to make IOTA Ecosystem Development Fund operational again? So this is actually a very exciting announcement that happened a few days ago, where there was a governance vote, where I hope all of you voted, where there was the setup of 2 new growth funding committees. One of them is our new DAO. So that is basically a new grant committee. It's being set up in the Marshall Islands. It's fully DAO governed. And that committee is going to help fund some of these initiatives in the community. And the second committee that was set up through this vote is the growth committee. So the growth committee is then going to also be governed through this committee, is also going to be governed through through TEA, right, the Tangle Ecosystem Association, so that this funding can be deployed to the ecosystem to fund certain initiatives, to attract developers, and so on. So I think I can really advise all of you to check out what happened there, and this blog post basically summarizes how the governance vote happened and what the results were. So the EDF, which was structured in Germany, is actually going to be shut down, because it was just simply impossible to fund any projects because we were so limited in what we could fund through that entity. How can we help to stress test the Shimmer EVM properly as not that technical community members? Dave?
Yeah, that's. Shall I take that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we want with this testnet is we want to validate it, we want to battle test it, and the best way to battle test it is to actually use it. So with this network available, we see all these projects deploying. The projects have their own way of marketing their project and getting you to try it out. And next to that, there will also be additional campaigns where we will incentivize people to have as many interactions with the network as possible in as natural way as possible. So you're really going to get your hands dirty with the DeFi applications. You're swapping out your tokens, lending tokens, whatever. All with the testnet tokens, of course, which you can use, and you can really start to learn how the ecosystem works. But it will also allow the applications to get tested, and also will give us a lot of metrics and input as to where we can still make improvements. Plus, it will battle harden the network. So it's a beneficial situation for everyone participating here to actually start using the testnet, either as a developer by deploying stuff, or as a user by using the applications that are deployed on the chain. That's the best way to test it. We get some real input instead of trying to simulate actual real-world usage. We're actually incentivizing real-world usage.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all of you should really just participate and try out every dApp that is out there, and get the tokens from the faucet, play around with it, mint tokens and all of that stuff. So we'll definitely provide more tutorials. And as Dave mentioned, there's a range of campaigns planned to support this testing. So you can definitely expect a lot more instructions soon. And thank you for asking that question. I think that's the spirit to get to mainnet release as soon as possible. When is the testing phase over? How does the IF decide when exactly the EVM is migrated to the staging network? Is it by gut feeling? Is it a question of bug-free days, or rather when official audits guarantee network security? Are there already ideas about this?
Yeah, there are definitely ideas about this. We have some very strict internal guides that we want to keep to. We want to make sure that the testnet has been running for a couple of months and no major issues have occurred, that there are no major bugs still open, that there are no open cases of any stuck transactions or fund loss, no chain resets needed, etc. But essentially it comes down to if after a couple of months we are confident with the release, we know that it's working, we know that it's working as expected, we're not having any issues with fund loss, etc. And then we can say, okay, we think this is good enough to bring it to the network and make it a real chain with real value. But yeah, there's no fixed date for it per se. It's also not really a gut feeling. There are some metrics that we take into consideration. The most important thing is that we do it with confidence and that we are happy with the release. And before that, we shouldn't really do that. So far, it's looking good, but yeah, we have to see how things progress during the testing. So it's really essential, again, to really use this test network. The more input we get, the better the product will get, and the more confidence we will get into the network.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to highlight that we don't want to give out like timelines again right now, because that is going to be like, oh, like this timeline has been met, and why aren't you launching right now? Right, so we kind of know how it usually goes. But we have an internal like some kind of understanding of what is needed for the EVM to be launched in production. So let's see how the current testing phase goes. Obviously, the longer this runs without any interruptions, the better. And so that also means that now that the ecosystem is starting to deploy, it's very important that we get this confidence in the network, and then we can start making plans about getting it onto the mainnet. But we'll obviously keep everybody closely in the loop. Can we get an update after the research summit, please? Is there a concrete plan on pushing out the MVP? What is missing? For me, it seems pretty close now, according to GitHub. Thanks. So that question is obviously about IOTA 2.0, where we had the research summit last week. And I think everybody came back pretty excited because we answered some important questions around the 2.0. I think that we'll probably share some like results of that meeting. All I can say right now is that everybody's obviously very much focused on moving forward from the MVP to actually releasing a node software, right? Because that is the most important next milestone. And that is basically what the team is working on right now. So that it's not about the MVP, but it's really about getting this to run so that we can get a release candidate for IOTA 2.0. And maybe something important to mention, right? Right now, we have the Stardust protocol. And on Stardust, we have the Shimmer EVM, which runs through IOTA chains. That protocol is right now being tested and validated on IOTA. So after the Shimmer EVM is running live in production on the Shimmer network, we will then also work on actually getting the Stardust protocol to run on IOTA, right? So then IOTA gets upgraded with the new release, with the tokenization framework, and also with smart contracts on IOTA. And we actually want to coincide that upgrade with the IOTA 2.0 upgrade on the Shimmer network, right? Because obviously, after Shimmer has helped us to test, validate the Shimmer EVM, the tokenization framework, the Stardust protocol, Shimmer will then be upgraded with IOTA 2.0 so that we can all help test and validate that. And obviously, with the Shimmer EVM, everything will still be the same because IOTA 2.0 is the layer one. It doesn't have any impact on the execution layer, on the layer two. So I think that is really the big goal here, right? So that one upgrade moves over to the next, and so that we can continue on with this release schedule. But there's no timeline yet. It's important because right now the focus is obviously on Shimmer EVM. What is the current plan to transfer the different modules of the Go Shimmer node to a Shimmer node? this is already what I sort of mentioned, right? The MVP, we're sort of concluding a lot of that and focusing now on actually getting what we call a core node set up. So that development has already started. Could you please clarify the scaling strategy for IOTA? Is layer 1 sharding still on the table, or will sidechains be the main solution? And how is that then connecting to sound IOTA tokenomics? Do you want to take this, or should I?
Yeah, sure. So not really a Shimmer EVM related question, but sort of is in ways. I mean, with Shimmer EVM or with IOTA smart contracts, it's already a scaling solution that can be applied for smart contracts on Shimmer at this moment, because you can run multiple chains at the same time, all anchored into the same network. You can have cross-chain communication through layer 1. So this is already some kind of sidechain-like setup where you have scaling. This is something we can do now and in the near future. Then you can think, when we have something like layer 1 smart contracts, that you have scaling with zero knowledge rollups, and layer 1 sharding is definitely still a topic, and I think very much a holy grail. If you have that done properly, that's amazing, and then it's GG. But yeah, that's obviously not something. Yeah, it's obviously not something you will solve before you have the core node software with coordinate IOTA 2.0 implemented. You need to have that done first on a single chain, and then you have to look at sharding that instead of trying to solve every problem all at once, because then you will just keep continuing to work on things. I think it's good to just first start with the basics and then go from there to shard it out. So I think that's definitely a longer term strategy, but definitely not something that you will see on the short term regarding sharding. And that's why we have solutions like IOTA smart contracts, IOTA chains, where you can have multiple chains to scale that way until we are at a further stage with things like sharding.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one important point to make right now, I think at the moment, it's not scaling that is the bottleneck, but it's really usability, right? Where you have real utility in a network, where you have real users, real dApps, real teams, a lot of funding, a lot of liquidity, right? And that is why sort of, I think close to 2 years ago now, we sort of reprioritize really all of the efforts around the IOTA smart contracts framework, because it's much more important right now that we focus on having a thriving ecosystem than focusing on having the best layer 1 technology, right? Because us delivering coordinate, us delivering IOTA 2.0 doesn't really translate in adoption. Smart contracts directly translates into adoption. That's kind of an obvious decision, right? But obviously, we have a multi-year roadmap with our research and with our development, and IOTA 2.0 is a really key ingredient to our scaling, right? Because we're not the blockchain, we are a DAG. We enable this multi-threaded architecture so that layer 2 chains and transactions can actually be executed simultaneously, right? And so that actually makes IOTA a perfect environment. Shimmer obviously makes it a perfect settlement layer for layer 2 networks, for ZK rollups, and also really a very powerful layer 1 ecosystem, right? And so layer 1 sharding is definitely something that is still on the table. But right now, the main priority, how we're going to scale, is through being multi-chain, right, and having this connectivity between them. And how this translates into sound tokenomics is, I would really define, or we really define IOTA as a sort of a circular economy, right, where the value of IOTA increases as there's more network activity and more demand for the block space in the network, right? And so I think all of you can really check out that slide here to know more about the tokenomics, and we'll share more through our tokenomics paper as well. Could you also open up the status of assembly? Is anybody working on that? As I mentioned, right now the main focus is on the Shimmer EVM, so that's the most important immediate next step. So there's no point in really working on assembly when we need to first have the entire framework running, and when we first need to make sure that the EVM is live, right, running in production. And so I think once we are further with that, we can also talk more about what the plans are with assembly. But right now, obviously, nobody, like assembly is basically, like Shimmer EVM is basically the first iteration of what would be assembly. And in my it has been very little communication from the research group past 1 year. I find information about people being in research group, but not anymore in member in IF. Could you please tell what is going on there? Topics, plans, members. A little over a year ago, we actually had a sort of introspective, right? Trying to do some soul searching, what we want to do with IOTA 2.0 and everything there. So I think one of the most important outcomes of that was obviously IOTA chains as an agnostic framework to deploy layer 2 networks is incredibly important. Layer 1 smart contracts is incredibly important, right? And so that's why a little less than a year ago, we made this decision to work on layer 1 smart contracts. And so if you want to know what the research group has been working on, is really focused on that, right? IOTA 2.0 and layer 1 smart contracts. And what we have been focused on in engineering is getting the Shimmer EVM running. So I think over the next couple of months, we will be able to share more about those plans. And in my mind, the most important question, how is the financial situation? A bit provocative. In my opinion, too much resources are wasted. Idea of double node software, now double token Shimmer, IOTA. I see the point, but can we afford this kind of decisions, adding extra complexity? So the financial situation of the foundation is pretty healthy right now, right? So we have sufficient capital and sufficient funding so that we don't depend on the market or how the market is going to behave over the next few years. Our big objective right now is to really make sure that through the success of Shimmer and as we expedite or move forward with things with IOTA 2.0, that we will be able to get significantly more resources, right, i.e. funding, so that we can really take on some of these bigger challenges and really compete in this space. So that is some stuff that we have been working on behind the scenes. So I think over the next couple of weeks or months, we'll be able to conclude that. But overall, I think we're in a good position. We also, through this market downturn, actually cleaned up a lot in terms of focus or in terms of stopping projects, in terms of like stopping teams that didn't really matter too much, right, anymore to helping IOTA achieve its objectives. And so I think we did some important maturation of the entire team, of the organization, and of what our focus is. And so the focus with the foundation is obviously on R&D primarily. I think quite many in the community have read Ivalda's series about layer 2 sidechains and been surprised by the missing response from IF. What is the reason for being officially silent here? Do you have any comments on his ideas?
Shall I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ivalda's has put out a blog series, and everyone is obviously very welcome to post out communications. These are very much his own ideas, and of course, own ideas are very welcome in the foundation, but they are also to be discussed within the foundation as if this is something that we want to do. And we decided not to pursue this specific way of doing things in favor of another strategy. So we kind of did not really follow up on that in public, but it's also not the direction that we are actively following. And this happens a lot, right? It's usually a lot more confined to the foundation, but there are a lot of different people within the foundation with specific ideas on how to do stuff. They pitch it internally. Sometimes they pitch it externally as well. And we see if we can make it a fit within the foundation and if we can find a common ground there. On this one, there were other ideas that we thought had more merit. And together with technical committee within the foundation, there was a decision made that we would not pursue this effort, but another effort. No. We don't have to make a public fight about it. Of course, this is something that can be resolved internally. So that's probably why you don't really hear a lot about it, apart from the initial blog posts.
I mean, we have collectively made the decision, and I think we have to abide by that decision. And ultimately, we're making decisions based on the best interest of the project, right? And that's the most important thing. What did come out of the trip to the Emirates so far? Anything to tell us regarding cooperation or investments? I can't share much right now, but obviously we are very excited about working more in the Middle East and also working more in Asia. I think when it comes to IOTA, we have a very strong brand We are one of the oldest projects. We are very reputable, right? And so I think what has been our focus is to leverage the good parts of IOTA and sort of, I wouldn't say reinvent, but really improve the image of IOTA by making sure that people understand that we are going to be a player in the crypto space. We want to have DeFi on IOTA. We want to have NFTs and all the crazy stuff, but do it in our way, right? Where it's not about having token Ponzi schemes, but where it's really about doing all of this for a good reason, right? Because we believe that DeFi is really there to help us achieve our goals of the future and help us achieve our vision to bring blockchain to the real world. Right, and so especially in the Middle East, the UAE, they are also understanding the potential of IOTA, and so our goal will be to really be more present in the region and figure out who we can work with there. And so I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll probably be able to share more about what is happening there. But what I can say is that really majority of the crypto ecosystem is there, and it's just simply amazing how fast-paced Dubai and like especially Dubai is. So it's good. And please explain how the IF is going to be financed for the next 5 to 7 years. What creates revenue? How many people can the IF keep on board for set time? Is the IF needed after set time, or will further development be the ecosystem's job? And to answer your last question first, I think our goal is to really decentralize the protocol, right, the network, and also decentralize the ecosystem. So this dependency on the foundation is not good for IOTA's future success, right? So that means that we need to slowly start to decentralize by having other teams developing the node software, obviously by having the ecosystem build out the applications and the use cases on top of IOTA, so that the foundation is no longer the only one pushing IOTA forward, but we have all of you really helping us push IOTA forward. So that is the big goal, right? That does not mean that the foundation will be shut down or that we don't see a future for the foundation. Quite the opposite, right? I think the future purpose of the foundation is R&D, right? Because that is where we can really center all of the talent that focuses on the protocol development, and is also regulatory affairs, right? And obviously also helping with ecosystem development and stuff. And the way that we're going to be financed for the next 5 to 7 years is obviously through our token treasury. That is probably the main way in which it will work. Even though we're in a bear market, I think all of us are very hopeful that over the next couple of years, the crypto markets and the value of those crypto assets is going to increase, because there will be more adoption, right? And also it will be more visible or more popular and more needed in the world. I think in terms of revenue streams, we had a lot of thoughts and discussions about that internally, but I think at this stage right now, if we focus on setting up revenue streams, that means that we have to deprioritize things on protocol development, right? Because that means people need to move over to other teams. And so we should not do that. So I would say right now, our big focus is obviously on financing through the protocol, and then obviously also through the success of the ecosystem, right? So where there will potentially be some revenue streams coming in through revenue sharing with some of the dApps and stuff like that. But let's see. Are there any ties to developers and industrial projects in the US? Asking since IOTA had problems getting established in the US due to exchanges refusing to list the coin in the US. We currently don't do much ourselves as the foundation, but probably some ecosystem projects are doing stuff in the US. Are there any plans to actively gain new users, builders of the protocol? How do you advertise devs to come to IOTA? How do you approach the broader crypto community to showcase the advantages of IOTA over other protocols? Is there a strategy to grow and spread utilizations? And if so, how does this strategy look like? Absolutely, right? That's the most important task that we have right now with the Touchpoint team, where we have been speaking and obviously have been approaching other protocols on other networks. What we will be doing as well is we also give out grants to those teams. We also are thinking about doing airdrop campaigns to attract users. And ultimately, by deploying the chain, by offering new opportunities, we will also see some of those builders coming onto Shimmer and coming onto IOTA. So I'm very confident that we will be able to attract more dApps to launch on top of Shimmer. Can I send RMS from layer 1 to my Metamask account if possible? That means that my RMS are now owned by the EVM contract chain alias output. Then how can a decentralized dApp, if I do not control the tokens? Is it decentralized because I trust that the smart contract tracks the ownership of my tokens somehow?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So it's definitely possible to send your layer 1 tokens to your Metamask. You can do this right now with a testnet either by requesting tokens to the faucet, or you can use the latest beta of Firefly, where you can just send your Shimmer tokens over or any other kind of tokens over to the Shimmer EVM chain, and they will be added to your account there. You're completely right. They are locked into a alias output, and that alias output is controlled by the chain, or rather the active validators of the chain. The active validators form a quorum. So say there are 7 validators, then 5 of those validators will have to say, okay, this is the way the next state of the smart contract chain will be. Otherwise, the chain cannot progress and no funds can be deducted there. So you have to trust the validators of the chain. Currently on the testnet, those validators are just the foundation. But of course, for the real Shimmer EVM, there will be some kind of proof of authority system where the biggest ecosystem projects that really have a benefit in growing the Shimmer ecosystem will be part of that validator set. And together they will collectively guard the alias output holding those funds. Yeah, basically the ownership of the tokens, once they are deposited on the chain, are tracked on the chain indeed in a built-in smart contract, the so-called account smart contract, which keeps track of exactly how many of the tokens you deposited belong to you. And if you transfer them on the chain themselves, they also transfer to the new user, who can then withdraw them from the chain again.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go through the last questions real quick. I guess the validator nodes in the Shimmer EVM testnet are currently run by the IF. Is there a plan on how and when the validators will be allowed to get involved for the Shimmer EVM mainnet launch?
Yeah. So like I just said, they're currently for the testnet run by the IF, and the main reason for that is we do a lot of updates right now, and it's just the easiest way to run the testnet is because we can just deploy the whole testnet ourselves. It will be done in 5 minutes, and if we have to send a message every time to every validator to update their nodes and wait for a day, that's not really helping us with our development speeds. But yeah, that will phase out over time. And for the Shimmer EVM itself, that will not be the case. The idea is essentially to bring the biggest ecosystem players. So you can think of like the big dexes, the bridges, etc., to make them validators in the chain, and kind of a proof of authority system where a big part of the projects that have a big stake in the project itself help with validating the chain and keeping the chain safe.
Yeah. Other than testing and fixing bugs, are there any other things that need to happen or things that you really want to do before Shimmer EVM gets on the mainnet?
Yeah, so the basics are there right now. Everything else is extra, but there are some things that we really want to address. For example, the fees are right now, they are configurable, but they're kind of fixed. There's no kind of fee auction, and that won't help us with the congestion control because it would need a lot of manual fee adjustments. However, we don't want to implement a traditional fee auction because that would implement a sandwich attack. And that's also not something we would want to support. So we're coming up with another solution for that. That's something that I really would want into the next phase. And also in terms of developer experience, we have the Magic contracts now. But we can do a lot more there to make it more user-friendly, more developer-friendly, to do stuff with the layer 1 tokens. What we see right now is that projects quite easily take the easy way out. They go with like a standard ERC20 or EC721 for their tokens, and they don't really use the native assets, but this takes away from our efforts to create a cross-chain environment where you use the layer 1 native assets. If you just use the ERC20, you can't really transfer to another chain anymore, unless you put it through some bridge or something. So we really want to make it really easy and a good user experience to use these native assets, so that there's no good excuse to not use it. And that way they will make those assets instantly compatible with future expansion of chains and additional scalability of the system.
Yep. What about the multi-chain functionality? Is the next priority after single-chain Shimmer EVM on the mainnet? Does this functionality need only testing and bug fixing, or there is still some implementation work to do there?
Yeah. So ISC was really developed with this multi-chain in mind. So all the functionality is there. However, it didn't receive that much love and attention when developing Shimmer EVM, because that's very focused on a single chain, and there's a lot of additional functionality that can be added and a lot of functionality that can be improved. However, all the basics are there right now, and yeah, it's primarily a thing of bug fixing, testing, and adding developer experience.
Yeah. I think so far community knows very little regarding the function of the ASMB token. Anything you can say about that? I think I already mentioned a lot about that above, right? Where it is about having the token to incentivize the validators. And obviously we have some pretty big plans for IOTA and assembly, right? And so we have those pretty much finalized internally, and so we're going to share them in a couple of months with the community as well. And so things are progressing there as well. Obviously, right now, the most important next step is that the Shimmer EVM runs in production on the Shimmer network, and that we sort of see the success in this release, in the technology that we've created. Any news regarding the tokenomics white paper? The tokenomics white paper is pretty much finalized from our side. That's where we also got this very nice graphic from, right, which sort of shows this circular economy in IOTA. And obviously Shimmer will also have the same tokenomics. We will publish the white paper together with the sort of relaunch campaign of IOTA, which we are currently working on, which includes education around IOTA 2.0, including IOTA chains and layer 1 smart contracts and all of that stuff. So as we go live with that, we'll also obviously share the tokenomics white paper with the community. I suggest that the other questions I will, or also you, Dave, if you want to, that we'll answer them via text, right? Because this will probably take another half an hour, and it's already pretty late. It's already getting dark, you know. And so I think that was really awesome. And I think what all of you can expect, first of all, there's a lot more dApps that are going to deploy onto the network. So you will all be invited to participate there, to try them out. And I'm sure that each dApp will have their own unique way to incentivize and to reward testers. The second thing that is going to happen, we are currently working on a lot of more educational material, right? How to use the EVM, how to participate. And we also have some very exciting interviews and YouTube tutorials lined up so that all of you can be in the know of what's happening and how to participate. And the final thing is, obviously, we are very much focused on continuing the testing and the development of the Shimmer EVM so that we get this running in production as soon as possible. Obviously, our objective is to do this safely and soundly, but also obviously do it in a way in which we can get to the mainnet as soon as possible. Right? So it's always a balancing act. I think the term is fast but slowly. Right? So we do want to be calculated, and as we move fast. So thank you so much, Dave. I think this is really like a huge achievement. So you can be incredibly proud for this. And,
yeah, I'm super happy we got there in the state right now. And let's just make it nice, and then we'll launch with a bang.
Let's ship it.
Ship it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.